and welcome to the program. Oftentimes when we talk about drugs, we don't talk about the implications and the repercussions that it has on our families and also on society as a whole. This is a very difficult subject that most people don't talk about, but with us today we have got the founder of the Volatile group, Volatile, to talk about things that we generally don't bring up in normal conversation. Welcome to the show, Khalesi. Now, this is such an interesting subject, but it's also a subject that people are aware of, but they don't talk about. It's not just the drug itself. You've mentioned on numerous occasions. It's about the person and why they turn to drugs.
That's right, that's right. It's actually looking at the contributing factors. You know, not one single person just want to wake up one morning and say, I'm going to use drugs today. Yes, no. Things happen. To numb the pain, whatever it may be, there's contributing factors. If we look at the contributing factors, whether it be, domestic violence within the home, whether it was, rape or incest or homelessness, mental health, a lot of that literally, things would have happened to them. So to numb the pain, they turn to, like you would say, is an escape. Just to numb the pain that they're going through. And that literally leads into, other things. So people would say it's a recreation, just a social thing, but even that in itself, why would you need to take drugs or alcohol to be social? You can, look and just, be a natural high. But obviously things happen and you don't get full-blown addict. Things happen gradually. Yes, your usage increases as well.
But before we get to the nitty-gritty of it all, let's just quickly talk about the Volatile group itself. How did it come about, and what's it been like for the past year?
Well, how did it come about? It has been... Volatile group was literally created because we could see what the problem was, we have here in Fiji. Initially, the Volatile group comes from my last name, my grandfather actually, just to pay tribute to him. He was, an old veteran. He went to, the old First or Second World War and everything else, but he was a man of integrity. He was, apart from being a soldier, a brave soldier, he was always a farmer as well. He always gave to his family, gave to his village, and, and I got to see that strong man that has love, can be a soldier but cares for his family more than anything. And it was literally just paying tribute to him. So hence we created Volatile Group, and Volatile Group is an NGO, but under Volatile Group there's 5 different pillars under that, or 4. First being the drug-free world to Fiji. The other one is drug and alcohol rehab, yes. And then obviously the other one is youth at risk. No violence against women or children as well, yes, and life with a purpose. And all these pillars have different objectives and goals. So if we look at Truth About Drugs, it's looking at the factual information about drugs and just sharing that. Look at a drug and alcohol rehab, it's like we don't have one in the country. So we would love, yes, to actually be able to be part of that process, building one or creating one here in this country.
Not to sound sanctimonious, but this comes from a place of pain for you.
Yes,
you coming from experience, which is why you decided to start off this initiative to reach out to those that may need help but don't know where to find it.
Yes.
Could you, if you don't mind, could you talk to us about it?
So it's literally based all around my story, my testimony. The thing is, what I went through here before I went overseas. So, growing up here in domestic violence home, the experiences being the eldest, in the family and everything else, and alcohol abuse that I, encountered here. My father was a drunk, yeah, but he had his own issues that he had to deal with and everything else. And then obviously I was sent overseas on false pretenses at 13. And, my parents told me I was coming back. I was only going up for 4 weeks, but that literally changed in 4 weeks. And Mum, I rang Mum and said, can I come home? She said, no. My whole world changed at 13. Yeah, my education finished here in Fiji. And then obviously being overseas, the culture shock you experience, yes. The family that I went and stayed with, I didn't even know them well. I had to get to know them. 4 weeks after they knew that I wasn't coming back, back here, it was like for them it started to get cold. If I was in the kitchen, they were screaming in the other room. What are you doing in there? Why are you in the cupboard? Yeah. That only went for so long, then I started doing couch surfing. So that's anyone that would open their door if there was a room on the floor in the kitchen, on the porch, in the garage. As long as there was a roof over my head, I would be comfortable. Yeah. So that was couch surfing. I only did that for 6 months, and then I ended up on the streets of Sydney. So in the late 80s, early 90s, 3 years I spent on the streets of Sydney, and everyone knows, George Street joins up to William Street. William Street at the end is King's Cross. That was my world. So when you were young, I stayed on the street for so long because there were young people just like me. They know what it's like to feel abandoned, neglected, unloved, unwanted. Yeah. And you do things when you're on the streets. Yeah. So for me, my drug of choice wasn't marijuana. Marijuana did nothing for me. Yeah. For me, it was meth. So back in my days, we called it go-wee or speed. Yeah. But when you're under those drugs, under the influence, your thinking is distorted. So obviously, whilst I was on the street, I was raped, violently raped. And then I went back to the family and I told them, and they said, you know what happened to you is such an embarrassment. Nobody needs to know. And I just thought, wow, but you're my family. Off on the streets, I went again because I couldn't find that love, literally. I found the sense of belonging with my young people that was with me on the streets. Yeah. Tried to commit suicide a few times. Yeah. But the drug was like my coping mechanism to numb the pain, to block the noises, the voices. Yeah. But 17, I met someone that took me off the street. He was my escape. Yeah. He was my escape. And then obviously we moved in together. Our son was born in 1991. There was a knock at the door in the middle of the night, 10:30. When someone knocks on your door, you know it's not going to be good. Yeah. Immigration was there, so I was illegal. Nobody told me I needed a visa to stay in the country. I went on a visitor's visa, and then obviously they handcuffed me, took me to the nearest police station, fingerprinted me, strip search, and put me in a cell. I was only 19 at the time. I got in that cell. You will never know what it's like to hit rock bottom. It's different for everyone. That night I got on my hands and knees. I never prayed. I never knew God existed after what I went through. But I got on my hands and knees and I prayed. And I was, Lord, if you take me out of this mess, if you help and take me out of this mess, I promise to give my life for one person. Just one person, not the whole world or the whole nation. Yeah. That prayer gave me a sense of belonging and, strength. 3 days later, I got transferred to Villawood Detention Centre. That was another nail in the coffin because, you get processed, you don't exist as a name, you're given a number. The van pulls in and it's just barbed wire. Yeah. And I walked out of the van and I looked at the barbed wire and I thought, what did I do that was so wrong? What did I do to deserve this? Yeah. That was literally, for me, it was, the mental, mental illness, literally for me, the thoughts and everything else was still there. It was, am I not good enough? What did I do? Yeah. From there, six months later, I got transferred, I got released on my own bond, go out into the community, and then obviously the father of my child, we moved away from Sydney, went into Queensland. And it was like trying to transit back into, the community, new community, everything. It's like you're forever looking behind you, like immigration already got you. Yeah. 6 months later, I got the best news. Phone call, I got the best news, My permanent residency came through and I thought, hallelujah, I'm screaming, Oh, I couldn't contain it. But my family said, you need to keep that under wraps. Nobody needs to know that you were illegal. Because we have this tendency of looking down at people when they're illegal. On my passport, I was an alien, yes. But I tell you what, I needed to know how they even found me. Yeah. And they explained the whole process to me.
Thank you very much for being so honest and sharing with us your harrowing and heartbreaking experience. Stay with us. We'll be back with more after this short break. Welcome back. Kalesi, before we went to break, you shared with us your experience, and that was difficult to listen to. I don't know how you had the strength to come through and be where you are. But it's really like you said, a testimony to see that there's no such thing as all hope is lost, which is why you founded the Volatile group.
Yes.
Actually, we'd like to know more about the founding and what sort of inspired that, because I mean, the last we heard from what you were telling us, you obviously had experienced a life of dependency on drugs to get you, through the day. So at what point in your life did you decide that you needed to make a switch around?
It's literally, when I got the phone call, literally, I found out who reported me to immigration and everything, and even the process of how they found me. Yeah. I mean, they had, the federal police watching me for 2 weeks. That was, wow. And it was just, I found out in the end, it was just one of my family that reported me. And it was like, wow, okay, how are we going to do this? Yes. So the first thing I did as soon as I got my permanent residency was getting an engineering certificate in sandblasting and powder coating. I needed to challenge myself. And that's the thing, when you're lived on the street, when you have, been able to hustle on the street and survive, it plants a seed that you don't take, anything for granted. Obviously from there, I went on to become a probation parole officer. My first day in a prison, I felt at home, and that was in 1998. I felt more at home in the prison than I did out in the community, because why? Those people, those prisoners, and it's only by the grace of God that I'm sitting on this side of the fence, yeah. They were like my brothers, they were like my family. If I can get out of the mess and make those changes in my life, there's no reason why they can't, yeah. So from there, being a probation parole officer, then police had hunted me. Offered me a position that I couldn't pass up, and that was working with young offenders committing armed robberies throughout New South Wales. That was for 4 years. Loved it. And it was literally just learning from one end to the next. And then from there I went on to the Australian High Court Mental Health Tribunal. Now I wasn't satisfied. I thought, okay, I need something else. Went on as a prison officer. So I did prison officer for about 8 years, working in serious offenders, with serious offenders in a male institution, yes. That I started to see, how can you make the changes and everything else. And obviously I got moved to a remand centre. The remand centre, one remand centre, the population of 1,500. I was in charge of education and program. That planted the seed of, when we talk about rehabilitation, yes. We talk about recidivism. How do we stop that? It's looking at trends. How do you make an assessment and creating programs to help them address their offending behaviour, and let them be part of the process. They part of that dialogue with you, and they tell us. They literally told us what they wanted, and I just go and create programs. Yes, implemented that, and then obviously 3 years after that, I got transferred to a drug and alcohol rehab. That was 12 months in a rehab where you're literally dealing with the full-blown drug addicts, yeah, from heroin addicts to cocaine to crystal meth. Although the youngest was 18, the eldest was 65. And then obviously I was starting to see, me and my husband, we were starting to see what was happening here in Fiji. 2018, I came for a visit just on holiday. I was fortunate to meet with the Minister of Defence, the current Minister for Defence and National Security, Inia Seratu. He planted the seed. He said, can you come back and help us? Your country needs you. And I thought, okay, I need to go back. I need to pray over it and make sure it's, the purpose is right, yeah. So I came last year, and then I got to see Fiji was not the same anymore. I left in 1987. My views, my lenses, that's how I remember Fiji in 1987. We had the airline the way the world should be, Back in those days, you could have your doors open. You can walk down the street without even worrying. Come back last year, hey, it's a different landscape here in Fiji. Yes, everything has changed here. So why we literally created Volatile Group, it's an NGO. The thing is, we have the flexibility to work with government and the grassroots. Yes, because this has to be a collaborative approach. Yes, working with government, NGO, different institution, and obviously the grassroots. We need to inspire the people, because it's the grassroots, they move this. Yes.
So what is it essentially that the Volatile group does out there in the community, though?
We do drug awareness, so we go out and we actually do drug awareness and just giving the factual information through our own stories. Yes. What are those contributing factors to why we went to drugs in the first place, and then looking at the effects, the harmful effects it does to the person, to the family, to the community, the employment, the whole nation as a whole. Yes. And it's quite amazing when you go through this, whether it be in a little focus group, one-on-one, or out in a conference with, over 1,000 in the audience. Yeah. The people, they are somehow moved about what they hear.
Well, it's interesting to note that off camera you had mentioned something about an eye-opening experience, especially traveling around Fiji. Kalesi had said that she had been out in the north and she had seen that misconception that we have where hard drugs is only limited to urban landscapes is not the case anymore. Talk to us about the recent
Yes.
instance where we had bricks of cocaine washing up on islands, remote and maritime islands.
Okay, so a few years back, this would be, 5 years ago, I think it would have been, so we had a few cocaine bricks that was washed up Moala Island, obviously Asawa, but because we went to Levuka through one of our audience, we did a trainer, so obviously to give out the factual information and train them to go out and be the arms and the legs. And through one of the participants actually said, a few of those bricks washed up in Moturiki. I didn't even know Moturiki had it. But one of them actually did say one of the villagers actually tasted, they had this, and for them it was scary for the villagers because they didn't know what it was. Because the brick had this buffalo, they didn't know, they just, some people had an idea of what it is, but some didn't. So this young man was, he was awake for 4 or 5 days straight, just going through trauma. He was, convulsing, and it was like, for me, it was like, however old this man is, imagine if there was kids sitting there and everything else. The one in Moala, it was young kids that actually picked it up. They were, yes, primary school kids, because they seen the buffalo, so they went to open it to taste it, and one of the older kids actually come and say, don't, yes, that's not good for you. Yes. So the thing is, those are the stories that we're hearing out there. They don't know what's coming, what's washing, on their shores. Went to the north, and that was in Vanua Level, the Golden Triangle. I didn't even know what that was all about, but obviously that's, the Kondrove, Tunuloa. It's not just the green is marijuana or cannabis, yes, it's the meth that's there as well. And police are literally, they're doing their best to go out there and fight this. Because we have so much open waters around our island, we can't keep up. Yes, that's why it's really pivotal that we utilize the people, the grassroots. We need to move the people to take ownership for this as well and be the arms and the legs, literally, for the police, for the government.
Thank you, Kalesi. Stay with us. We'll delve deeper into the issue of drugs in Fiji after this break.
Kalisi, the first time I remember being familiarized with your work was when I watched that SBS documentary about the prevalence of drugs in Fiji. Yes. And that documentary in itself was, I guess, an eye-opener for Fijians, because before that, of course, we'd known that there was a war on drugs and there was a serious, issue, but then to the extent to which it had, infiltrated our communities was really something that, and it's still something that a lot of people tend to underestimate. But the work that you've done, going into these communities, armed with your handbag full of pamphlets and posters and just having these living room meetings with people of the community. Talk to us about how deeply you think hard drugs have become a part of our living here in Fiji.
Oh, it has. Before I left, marijuana, 1987, everybody would smoke it, but they would hide. Hide behind closed door and everything. Now, no, it's like cigarettes. Yes. It's not just the young people. Literally, I get to see with inhalants, which is pan-pan. That's another element. It's the cases that we've seen with primary schools. Some of the schools here in like the urban areas and even the rural areas, the pan-pans are there. Yes. So I'll give you an example. We went to one of the village up in Volatile. Yes. I can't remember right now why. Yes, one of the villages in Volatile. So it's like 4 hours inland from Singapore. And then they call this village Little Jamaica.
Why is that? Because of the green everywhere?
Yes.
Ah.
Wow.
Yes. And then obviously we're up there and we had the privilege to go and talk to the primary school. Yes. And obviously you're talking from 200 kids from the kindergarten to class 6. And, you know, one of the few first question is, okay, hands up if you've seen marijuana, you know, all hands goes up. Do you know how to smoke it and everything, how people smoking? Yes, they throw the hands and say, ew, and it's like, wow. But when you are trying to motivate them about education, you know, you get a good education, you'll get a good job, you get to buy, you know, whatever it is. For them, why should they? They've already seen big dollars coming through with their family. Yes. You know, one of the other schools up the same region, you know, kids are used as runners for their parents. So they actually, you know, for them, it's, you can't just say, you know, it's only the green. No, it's the meth. It's literally the ice, the meth, the cocaine, the heroin. I didn't even know about heroin till I got here. Yes. And the one thing that I need to stress is when we look at these drug use, meth especially, crystal meth, here in Fiji, prevalence is the needle users. The one thing that scares us the most is the sharing of needles. You know, and the thing is, they don't, you know, drugs in itself is poisonous. When they're sharing the needle, they're not fully understanding what, you know, they've placed themselves in, the risk they've placed themselves in. Because there are certain cases where, you know, when you sit in the focus group, people will just talk openly about how they get it, how they score, you know, to the chance whereas, you know, one needle, 5 people would use it. And that is like quite scary.
Pardon me for just interjecting. This is coming from someone who's lived through the 80s and the 90s. This is when AIDS and the talk about HIV was rampant and people were quite aware of the implications and repercussions of using and sharing needles. Do you think that that has died down, and is that why people are still sharing needles, indulging in using hard drugs?
That's the thing. We need to look at when was the last time we actually, you know, did awareness on, you know, HIV and AIDS, and at the same time testing. When do people go for testing? You know, when you look at, you know, HIV test, when someone even, you know, when someone goes to the doctors and everything, you've got the people that, the fear of the stigma, you know, shame, you know, when they go and get the needle, the test and everything else, before they even walk out the door, the 3rd or 4th house already know what they went in there for. Yes. We are not, you know, the confidentiality doesn't go well here in this country, which is so sad. These people need the help, you know, where they can go to seek more information, yes. For the needle users, because Fiji are not known to be needle users. Yes, it's only when that documentary came out, it actually blew it out into the open of what was happening. Now, we need to have a look, when did meth hit this country? The first police case we had was in 1978. That's when meth came to Fiji. Yeah.
So this misconception that we have that it's a new drug
It's
and that...
not. It's been here for the longest time.
But it was
1978,
underground.
on the down low.
So what do you think actually helped propel it to the forefront for it to become, pardon my saying, mainstream?
That would be the locals actually get to see how much it is, yes, how much money you can make out of it. And the thing is, you look at the different contexts of the community, the young people, and everyone as such. When you have a drink, you know, you want to get drunk. When you have a smoke of weed or cannabis, you know, you want to be stoned. You like the hard stuff, yes. So a lot of the people that we've spoken to, they literally would go, they want the harder drug, yes. They're not happy with just, you know, the recreation use or anything else. No, they want the hard drugs. And, you know, the buzz, the high it gives them as well. You know, when you look at crystal meth, it keeps you awake for 4 or 5 days. Taxi drivers use it. You know, in Australia, the truck drivers, because, you know, they've got the work, they've got the deliveries they have to make. That's how they stay awake, yes. And it just, you know, the cycle just continues. And the thing is, you know, we've got some cases where cannabis, the joint is laced with meth. That's, it's quite shocking to actually hear that. Yes, so they are trying. Even, people are Googling how to cook meth here in Fiji. Yes, you hear it from, the National Fire Authority, even the Fiji police when they go to cases. They go into houses, house burns, and you see the person burnt just from the belly up. You can tell, yes, what they're doing is literally they're trying to cook this at home. Yes, to find the purest form of crystal meth in this country, you cannot find it. The actual purest form is like peanut butter. It smells like peanut butter, it tastes like peanut butter, it looks like peanut butter, yeah, but it's the purest form of meth, yes.
Very interesting discussion that we're having so far. Stay with us for more after this break.
So just carrying on the conversation where we left off in the last segment, you're an ex-addict and you've been through that life. One thing is to have conversations about drugs, but it's a whole different thing to have, the right conversations and the right approach towards drugs. A lot of the time we hear people in power talking about drugs, and you can tell that this person has never had a personal experience. They do not know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And what they're talking about is the completely wrong approach that's been, shown to not work elsewhere. You seem to have a rehabilitative approach, especially if we look at the way that the Volatile group is set up. Why do you think that is, and why did you choose to have a focus on rehabilitation?
It's a healing process, because I know when you talk about this, because we focus too much on the problem, we're more reactive. This country is more reactive. It's like it's not just a reactive, we need to look at the preventative measure as well. And obviously both have to go tandem, hand in hand. The thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, how do you best help a person? Yes. For me, I remember growing up here and remembering the classroom where the teachers bucket you at the front. And that's literally been the way we seem to think that drives the information down to people. It's not, it's more like fear. You're driving fear into the person. No, the thing is, at the end of the day, you want to make sure when you deliver the message, the person has to engage. You've got to be able to motivate and inspire them through your words. So it's literally studying people first and foremost. So how does people behave? Yes. So after, working with prisoners for such a long time and young people, they don't want to be lectured. Yes, we know we've got a problem. Yes, we need your help. We need your support. Don't come and tell us, and lecture us. We already know that. For us, it's literally giving them the factual information by using your stories. That is, your narrative is the most powerful tool that you could ever have. For us here, because we don't like to share our ugliness, our shameful journey and everything else, because the fear of being, judged. It's because of those taboo subjects we don't want to open up. It's amazing when you open up about what happened to your ugliness, people are just going to open in front of you and they say, you know what, I need the help. How can I help? At the end of the day, they just need someone to listen to them, someone to hear them. And the thing is, for the young people, it only takes them 5 seconds to assess if they can trust you. Because all they do is sit there, they look at the way you dress, the way you talk, the tone you use, the words you use. So for us, when we on the streets, we need to go to their level. We need to speak their language. It's streetwise on the street, yes. And it's different, different platform where you're sitting, your audience. So we change. We very much adapt how we deliver the message to people. Our workshops, so say for instance here, if we're doing a training in the schools, the language we use in the urban areas, everything is quite different. And if we go into the village and do it in, Turanganikoro or, what do you call it? The Mbose and everything else here with the villages, we change our dialect. We use, one of the other people literally to speak. The language is quite huge as well that we use, how to, contextualize it in what areas we're at. So I'm so blessed. My husband, he speaks Hindi. So we get the phone calls, from family in crisis. They need the help. They need, for us to go and talk to them. He comes and he just goes and he just does it. And it's literally, that breaks down everything. Yeah. We've done home visits, one-on-one counseling. It's not just, going and talking about drug awareness. It's the other fold. It's like, okay, someone just reaches out for counseling. And the thing is, I must add, not everyone can contact, who in this country actually you can go to for drug and alcohol counseling right now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. There's such a huge gap that's in the system with us here in Fiji. Yes.
And while we're on that, so what we seem to have here in Fiji is a more of a punitive approach,
Yes.
especially in terms of criminal justice.
Yes.
So if you are caught with, drugs or cultivating drugs or consuming drugs, it's jail for you.
Yes.
And having worked with people in
Yes.
prison systems, do you think that is an effective way?
No. Definitely not. Yes. A mandatory custodial does not work at all. Punishment. The thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, so the thing is, okay, we lock them up, we throw away the key. Nothing happens. So you're just stalling the problem. When they go into these areas or this institution, they get to learn more things anyway, and they say, okay, new tricks or whatnot. They start to, link up with other people or what they're doing. They come out, they've learned new tricks. I'm not saying all of them does it, but majority of the time, that's what they come out with, yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, especially when you consider that there's been quite a lot of public backlash and also outcry in the past couple of years with the rising number of domestic abuse cases, of incest cases, child abuse cases, sexual violence cases, and the prison sentences that are handed out to the perpetrators is usually a lesser term than those who are caught with drugs.
Yes.
And it's something that a lot of people say, well, it's a catch-22. We don't know whether to give them a harsher sentence to deter them or whether to put them in rehab programs or will they reoffend. How do we go about at least trying to make a dent in this problem?
Okay, so what happens right now when someone is arrested for whatever drug charges, right? Half of the time they're either put on bail or bail refused. Majority of the time it's bail refused. They go inside. So the thing is, we don't even have a diversionary program. So they're wasting court money, literally. They get arrested, they go into the court, but then the thing is, if they're placed on bail, please send them on a mandatory program so they can address or even do drug and alcohol or anger management, whatever the case may be. So by the time they go back to court, wherever they're doing the program, can actually send a report to tell the judge, you know what, they've actually done this is the courses they've done, these are some of the options, maybe is available to them. Yes, and when they do go inside, I'm not even quite sure what program we run inside. Is it just a holiday camp? Half of the time they're in there for 6 months to 8 months. What programs do they do in there? No, from what I've been, listening or hearing for some of the cases in remand centres, they don't do programs in remand centres, which is sad, really.
We've got a very, a very public example of that as well, but I think we can discuss that in our final segment.
Stay with us for more after this break. Welcome back. Kalesi, this is our final segment, and as much as we'd want for the conversation to be longer, I feel like we've pretty much covered the major factors that people don't usually voice out, don't talk about, are not aware of. And if we were to wrap up, the discussion on this subject, I suppose the one thing that we could look forward to is, like we said, trying to change having that paradigm shift in talking about things, in reaching out, in trying to accept those that need help. And this is where your organization comes in and does a very, very crucial role in that.
Yes, and it's very much, when people would ask, where do you start? And I actually got that when we did our training at Lebuka and Vanuatu, because it's too hard too difficult, too complex. Yeah, and the answer is you start from home. You start with your own home. Yeah, some people, they say, the police are not doing this, and the thing is, I've heard it all. People complain left, right, and center. The thing is, at the end of the day, you need to take ownership for this. You need to be the change, yes, to be part of the process, in the sense that, you know, start at home, have a conversation with your children, open conversation about what's happening. Even if you invest 10 or 15 minutes of your time each day just to see what's happening with, because, you know, as parents, we're too busy. Work obligation, family obligation, there's always something. It removes us from our parental role with our children. And of course, when kids are left in their own devices, when they're bored, when they're unsupervised, they're going to experiment, they're going to do stuff, yes. And then you look at, you know, with the churches and everything else, we need to bring it into the context of you know, not having any boundaries on this, actually having a conversation, because drug does not discriminate. It does not care how old you are, young, old, rich, poor, political affiliation you're with, yes, not at all. And the phone calls we get are from all across, not just urban areas, it's the rural areas. My heart sits on the rural areas right now because they are so vulnerable.
And it's not just the individual that is affected. There's so much more to it than that.
Yes, there is. There is, you know, individual, the family, the community. Community safety is on the line here. Hospital, our health system. We don't have a drug and alcohol rehab centre in this country, first and foremost. You know, St. Giles, you know, they don't have the capacity, not the, the resources to be able to take that on board, because you need a autonomous, you know, independent institution to take all drug and alcohol, you know, candidates in.
How far away are we from that tipping point, though? Before we get to that, how far away are we? How serious of a problem is it? Do we really need to do something right now before it's too late?
Yes, we do. How young they're getting, all we've got to do is look at the crime statistics, yes, all across the board. 2018, there was only about, you know, 180 or even 300 cases. Now with 3,400, yes, drugs alone, yes, drugs alone.
And because of issues of, you know, drug abusers relapsing and reoffending, we're going to have this system where our numbers are going to keep rising exponentially unless something is done. I personally would like to see, would love to see state-led, you know, rehabilitation centers being opened around the country. There was a very public example, because we were speaking about rehabilitation earlier, in the past 1 or 2 years. A very prominent super person kept getting arrested again and again for the possession of methamphetamine, and he kept getting bail and kept reoffending, and you know, people out in the public were like, you know, why isn't this person just getting help? Because it became a spectacle in front of the entire country. You know, this person clearly was in need of help, and it was a very clear situation of there being no one or no possible avenues, you know, for him to get help that he needed.
And that's the thing, if he does reach out, who would he reach out to? You know, the thing is, how fair of a justice would he get? You know, how would he be respected just to get the help? At the end of the day, it's like the support. Where would he get it and everything else? And he's not the only one. That's like similar cases all across. You know, people, they need the help. It's like, where do they go to? They know they're not vilified by anyone. Yes. And the thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, they were crying out. He was crying out. He needed the help more than anything. And like when you look at all the other cases here in Fiji, we don't have the resources here. We don't have programs on drug and alcohol here. Yes, workshop or training, just a safe space where they could just go and speak to someone in private, you know, just to have that, because that's all they need is someone to hear them out, to hear the taboo subject, because it takes a while for them to actually start opening up, because they've got to trust the person first. Yes, they'll keep going back to the drugs or the alcohol, yes, just to keep numbing the pain, yes.
It's nice to see that we've come to this point in Fiji where we're able to have open conversations, at least at some point in our lives, with people that we do trust. It's also nice to see that we've got support groups that are available. But for those who are not aware of the support that's available, for someone that just needs that one lifeline, who do they reach out to and how do they go about doing that?
That's it. So here we've got a few NGOs, for whatever reason. You know, you've got the suicide hotline, that's through Lifeline. Yes, Red Cross has got something. There are a few people. The thing is, even going to an NGO or whatever it is, you're sitting at home right now. If you know someone that you can trust, you need to offload You need to just find one person, yes, to offload whatever you're going through, whether it be a young person, old, adult, whatever it is. And I find half of the time it's a stranger. It's best to get a stranger, yes, to talk to than someone that of family, because you know you're hiding because of the shameful thing that's happened to you. You don't know whether you're going to be judged, you know. And half of the time it's just like, okay, who do they reach out to? For us, we're available 24/7, whether it's just by the phone, yes, even just to message us on Facebook. We're quite happy to do that. And we find a lot of people that we've been able to help all the way through for the last 12 months. It's just first instant of connection, yes. Just to be able to send them a message and saying, how are you going, how's things? Because they're just like, oh, you care. Because for far too long, people have just been closing the doors and, yeah, walking away from them.
Well, that's quite inspiring, and we do hope that the Volatile Group continues in its quest to encourage people to have the conversations and the dialogues that is absolutely needed. Thank you very much for making time for us tonight and for sharing your testimony with us. If you do need to get in touch with the Volatile Group, you can contact them by sending them an email, or you can get in touch with them on the Facebook page that they have. That is Volatile Group.
Drug-free World of Fiji.
Drug-free World of Fiji, there we go.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And that's all we have for you tonight. Have a great evening.